It's good to have you back in PrepStation History SSCE tutorials. Okay, let's do a recap of what we're talking about. We talked about the trans-Saharan trade, and we said it had to do with trade in the desert. And we said one of the things that changed the course of trade in the trans-Saharan trade was the introduction of camels. Before we go further, please take note that the trans-Saharan trade is was a legitimate trade. Some of my students asked me, ma'am, do they traded slaves? Yes, slaves were traded, but it wasn't the main commodity of trade. The main commodity of trade are the things I listed: salt, gold, spices, ostrich feathers, birds, horses, camels. Slaves were one of the least things that was being traded. So we can also refer to we can say that the trans-Saharan trade was the legitimate trade at that time. So please, I just need you to take note of that. Now, we're looking at another topic: Islam in West Africa. Islam in West Africa. One of the things that happened during the trans-Saharan trade was the introduction of Islam. As they were peddling, as they were trading, they didn't also trade the things I listed. We also had travelers, we had Islamic scholars that were trading Islamic pamphlets, materials, and all the things, Qurans and all the things. So it was through the trans-Saharan trade that Islam was introduced in West Africa. Islam was introduced in West Africa. It says Africa was the first continent that Islam spread into out of Arabia in the early 7th century. Almost 1/3 of the world's Muslim population resides today in the continent. We're trying to say that most people, 1/3 of the Muslim population resides where? In Africa. That's what it's saying there. It was estimated in 2002 that Muslims constitute 45% of the population of Africa. Islam has a large presence in North Africa, West Africa, the Horn of Africa, the Southeast, and among the minority but significant immigrant population in South Africa. So, the first West Africans to be converted were the inhabitants of the Sahara. We still now go back to the trans-Saharan trade. The Berbers and it generally agreed that by the second half of the 10th century, the Sahara had become Dar es Salaam, that is the country of Islam. The country of Islam. If you go back to your junior secondary school history, when we talked about the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire, the Ghana Empire, Mansa Musa, name them. You remember we explained, those of you, if you go back to your history, that the main religion was Islam. They were predominantly Muslims. So it was through the trans-Saharan trade. Please take note of this. Let's continue. After the Berber, look at the spread of Islam in West Africa. It says, after the Berbers' Islamization, the religion spread into the Western Sudan from the closing decades of the 10th century. First, Islam spread into the regions of west of the Niger Bend, then into Chad region. So what we're trying to say is Islam spread around the West African region. Islam spread round from the from the Sahara Desert, now into West Africa, Okay, look at this. It says, the first king of Mali. The Mali we are talking about is not Mali, the country, the present country in Mali. We're talking about the ancient Mali Empire. Please take note. The Mali here. History students, you should know this. When we refer to Mali here, we're talking about ancient Mali Empire. The first king of Mali to become a Muslim was Bamandana, who was reigning by the middle of the 11th century. Remember what I said. It says the kings of Ghana. Now, Ghana is appearing here. For non-history students, you may be wondering, we're still referring to the ancient old Ghana Empire. The old Ghana Empire, that is what we mean by the kings of Ghana. Please take note of this. On the other hand, did not embrace Islam until about the beginning of the 12th century, after the Almoravid invasions. Okay, it said in the Chad region, it appears from the Arabic sources that Uman Jimil, who became the king of the Kanem. Now, the Kanem we're referring to here, we're talking about Kanem-Bornu Empire, the ancient old Kanem-Bornu Empire. You can hear Kanem Empire or Kanem-Bornu Empire. We are talking about the same thing, please. It says it was the first Muslim king. Islam was first introduced into Hausa land from either Kanem or in the 12th or 13th centuries. So please, I need you to take note of this. So please read up as well. The following are the reasons for the spread of Islam in West Africa. By the end of the 15th century, Islam has spread southwards to the fringes of the forest belt. The first one, it says, the nature of Islam. The nature of Islam. It says the nature of Islam as a religion accepting polygamy to some extent, its tolerance of traditional African religion, its simplicity of doctrine and mode of worship helped propagators to make converts in West Africa. Remember, most of these people were already polygamists. So Islam already created room for them. Islam already created room for polygamy. So there was the adjustment with traditional religion was not so difficult. Apart from the area of worship. So, trade. I told you that Islam came through the trans-Saharan trade. So I need you to read. I won't talk about this. So take note. Another thing that helped Islam to grow was trade. I told you, as they were peddling their other goods, they also traded religion by the side. I talked about Islamic scholars, teachers, name them. All right. The third one, like I said, activities of Islamic clerics. The Islamic teachers. So they went about, the scholars, the malams, they went about preaching and training people, telling them about Islam and winning converts as well. Another thing is Islam gained grounds in West Africa through the activities of the individual rulers, the kings. So the kings. So when the cleric, the Islamic scholars introduced Islam to the rulers, to the kings, to the emperors, it was easy for the emperors to see that their subjects practice Islam. So when the emperors and the kings converted, It was easy for their subjects to also convert also to what? Islam. To also convert to Islam. Another thing that spread Islam was the Holy Wars. The Holy War. The Holy War. A significant Holy War that we know about is the Jihad War of 1804. The Jihad War, before the Jihad War of 1804, Islam had already existed. Please, I need you to take note of that. Remember, we said Islam came through the trans-Saharan trade, the desert. So Islam had already existed. The Jihad War or the Holy War was in the 19th century, 18th, 19th century. So, which was led by Usman dan Fodio when he conquered the Hausa states. You know the story. Then he made Gwandu and he formed the Sokoto Caliphate. Sokoto and Gwandu were his headquarters. So the Jihad War was one of the wars that really spread Islam strongly in Nigeria. Please take note of this. But before the Jihad War, Islam had already been existed. Then another thing Usman dan Fodio did was to create a right worship. At that time, when Islam was introduced, you see, we read it, that they also practiced Islam with traditional worship. So what Usman dan Fodio did was to give a clear-cut direction. The women should cover their hair, the men should keep their beards, a proper way of worship, a proper way of practicing Islam. So Usman dan Fodio came to create an order of how Islam should be practiced. Please take note of this. Okay, question. It says, prior to the introduction of Islam, the people of West Africa were dash. What is your answer? It's already here. Traditionalists. They were traditional worshippers. They were traditional worshippers. Please take note of that. Okay. All right. 17. All the following were factors responsible for the spread of Islam in West Africa, except dash. What is your answer? The answer is C. Trade with Europeans. Trade with Europeans. The answer is C. So please, let's continue. 18. Islam penetrated West Africa through dash. The answer is what? B. The answer is B, commercial contacts. Remember I said it's through the trans-Saharan trade, through the deserts. Please take note of this. Let's continue. 19. Which of the following was not an effect of the spread of Islam in West Africa? Okay, the answer is already there. Adoption of West African customs and tradition. So that is the answer. That is the answer. Many people in West Africa received their first knowledge of Islam from the dash. What is your answer? The answer is actually D. Muslim traders of North Africa. Muslim traders of North Africa. The introduction of Islam in West Africa enabled many rulers to A. Improve their system of administration. One of the things that the spread of Islam did was to create a system of administration. It created a system of administration. If you go back to political administration in Hausa Fulani, you will know you will look at the place of the Waziri, the Galadima, Name it. So there was a system where you have the emir at the apex, at the top of administration. The emir is both a political and a spiritual head. The emir is the custodian of the Sharia law. Take note of this. So improve their system of administration. A major social impact of Islam in West Africa was dash. Okay, let's see. C, introduction of a new type of architecture. Introduction of a new type of architecture. One major factor that helped in the spread of Islam in West Africa was dash. What do you think is the answer? The answer here is B. The answer here is B. Please take note of this. The answer here is B. It tolerated some aspect of traditional culture. Remember, I told you when Islam was introduced, they mixed Islam with some traditional worship till 1804, when we had the Jihad war and the proper thing was done. Muslim scholars in the court of Western Sudanese rulers were to dash. Muslim scholars. Okay, let's see. C, keep records. Keep records. That is the answer. Some of them, that was some of the way where they kept Islamic books, Islamic pamphlets, records, and all that. So these are some of the things that helped in the spread of Islam. The spread of Islam in West Africa was pioneered by who? What is the answer? I hope you will not say it's the Canary people. If you say that, you're wrong. All right, let's check. The answer is B, Western Sudanese traders. Western Sudanese traders. The introduction of Islam in Western Sudan brought about dash. All right, let's see. A, cultural unity. So Islam was able to unite the people at that time. Islam played a role of uniting subjects. I told you the Islamic scholars introduced it to the kings, the traditional rulers, and the subjects had to follow. So what it did was to unite people. The spread of Islam in West Africa was mainly facilitated by which people? B, the merchants. The merchants, the traders, the Berber merchants, the Arab merchants. It was through the merchants. Through the merchants. All the following made the spread of Islam in West Africa easier except dash. Easier except dash. The answer is D, pilgrimage to Mecca. Pilgrimage to Mecca. So it's accepted, I told you from the beginning, it's accepted polygamy, accepted some traditional practices. At that time, they were practicing alongside Islam, alongside the traditional practice. Trading activity, it was through the trade in the Sahara that Islam came through. So D is the answer. Okay. In their bid to spread Islam in West Africa, the Muslim scholars initially targeted the ruling class because the rulers dash were their main business partners, had enormous power and influence over the people, were very wicked to their people, were very much disliked by their subjects. What is the answer? Let's see. B, had enormous power and influence over their people. So they could make the people practice it. That was what helped them in spreading Islam, because they made the people practice Islam. The two renowned centers of Islamic education in West Africa between the 13th and 15th century were what? What is the answer? Okay, we'll see. Jin and Timbuktu. Jin and Timbuktu. These are two, in fact, they are known as Islamic Education Hub. They are known as Islamic Education Hub. Please take note of that. All of the following factors put the Muslim scholars in position of trust and influence in the royal courts of West Africa, except dash. D is your answer. D is your answer. So please take note of this. Which of the following was not an effect of the spread of Islam? Okay, let's look. All right, let's look at the answer. Complete abolition of the traditional religion? No, they didn't abolish it. They didn't. Rather, like I said earlier on, it worked together. Islam and traditional worship were embraced together. Please take note. One famous Islamic education center in West Sudan was Dash. We've already talked about it. Timbuktu. Timbuktu is your answer. Timbuktu is your answer. C. Okay. Which of the following statements was true about Islam in West Africa? Let's see. What is your answer? B. Islam encourage education. Now, the education we're talking about is Islamic education. We're talking about the learning and writing of Arabic languages. Speaking of Arabic, learning in Arabic languages, studying recitation of the Quran and all that. So that is learning the Islamic Sharia and Islamic laws. So that is what we mean by encouraging education. We've talked about the schools, the education centers, Islamic schools that were in Jin and Timbuktu. Which of the following was not a political effect of the spread of Islam in West Africa? What is your answer? Okay, let's see. D. Unification of large states of different cultural background. It was not a political effect at all. It wasn't. The introduction of Islam did not bring a new religion to West Africa, but also a system of what? Political administration. A is the answer. Political administration. I told you earlier on, I said it helped the traditional rulers to have a system of administration. Like, especially after the Jihad, there was a system on ground. There was a system on ground. But before then, there was also a political administration on ground, how rulers were to coordinate their subjects. And the Sharia law was used as a system of justice. Please take note of this. As a system of justice. The rulers of the empires of Western Sudan encouraged the spread of Islam in all the following ways except dash. Let's see. The answer is what? B. Levying taxes on Islamic scholars. Levying taxes on Islamic scholars. In fact, What some of these Islamic scholars did was to help. Some of these kings, some of these rulers came to meet Islamic scholars. They served as advisors to the kings, helping them in taking decisions that will affect their empires. So take note of this. Okay. All right, we have a new topic. We'll be going for a short break. We'll be back shortly. Please stay tuned and take care.